We'll get 2 minutes on the clock and your time starts now. I think we have a bit of a problem here. There we go. Case 3. Grace Chen, a 24-year-old medical student, is planning to embark on an international placement to rural Cambodia as part of her medical studies. Grace is concerned about her health and safety during her stay and seeks advice on travel precautions and preventative measures against malaria. She has no previous medical history, takes Levlin daily for contraception, and has no known allergies. She does not smoke, drinks 2 glasses of alcohol on weekends, and has a BMI of 24. Question 3.1. Outside of malaria prophylaxis, what general travel advice would be appropriate for Grace? Give 4 pieces of general travel advice. Alright, time is up. Let's have a look at some answers. So again, remembering this is outside of the malaria side of things, and usually that's a hint to push away, or they're going to be asking other things about malaria later. General travel advice here, and this is one of those things that you probably need to have a little bit of knowledge about travel medicine, or spent a little bit of time learning bits about different parts of the world. So something that you probably won't be aware of, but if you are, fantastic. If not, don't worry, there's plenty of other ways to get marks, is that you need a visa to enter Cambodia. So you don't want them turning up on the day and not being able to actually enter. Probably more related to the medical world would be make sure they purchase extensive travel insurance, medical travel insurance, that should specify, prior to travel. And that's true of developing pretty much any overseas nation these days. You really do need to make sure you've got good cover, as most of the world will have horrendous medical expenses if you do end up becoming unwell and needing to access medical services. Again, getting into knowing specifics about places people travel to, they should be made aware that Cambodia has severe laws against drug offences. And so letting them know about that beforehand, although there's no high-risk medications they're bringing with them, as a young person, potential uni student that may make potentially poor choices, not saying anyone here would make those choices, of course, it's important to flag these things so that they don't get themselves in deeper trouble. And tied into that as well, be aware of local laws and customs. So lots of things that they need to make themselves know about. For instance, there's no mocking or making fun of the royal family, being very careful about taking photos in public places that may accidentally photograph military installations, things like that. Things that they probably need to be aware of before they get there. Now, not just specific to Cambodia, but many parts of the world, they need to make sure that they bring enough of her medications to last the trip. So they're taking Levlin for contraception. Some places do get a bit funny about contraception, not the case for Cambodia, but strongly recommended that she actually brings her supply of her regular medication there, as the supply of that medication may not be quite up to scratch, or perhaps even the correct medication, and just don't get into that trap there. Of course, general travel advice, so be cautious of unwashed, uncooked food or open drinks, and always a good idea to direct them to smarttraveller.gov.au for additional information and as a information source where they can get most of this information in a rather concise, nice, laid out way. It used to be the case that you were asked to register with Smart Traveller just in case. These days they say don't worry about having to register, but check in and check the travel advice before departing, as well as regularly throughout your stay. Coming in from the chat here, we've got get traveller's insurance, fantastic. Pack a first aid kit, very good advice. Use a mosquito repellent. I'm going to be super pedantic here and say be careful with that one because they may class that as part of malaria prophylaxis, in which case you probably wouldn't get a mark for that one. Only drink bottled water, fantastic, it's going to get you marks. And fallen for the trap there, I'm very sorry. Outside of malaria prophylaxis, so using mosquito nets is probably going to fall into that same category as well. Yes, I get it. There's going to be lots of other diseases that they could get from mosquitoes in that region, but they are trying to push you away from that kind of direction, so I'd be leaving that. And this is one of those hints they're probably going to ask you other things that would involve mosquito nets later. As for drinking bottled water, yep, definitely. Barrier protection for sexual activity, oof, not on this list, but fantastic advice. And avoid medical procedures, again, not on this list, but also quite good advice, particularly when there may be some temptation if they're getting mates rates or whatnot while they're over there. So yeah, not on this list, but I think that actually would get you marks. Well done. All right, let's hope that the system's working and the buttons work properly and we actually see the question in a decent time frame this time. Let's get 2 minutes on the clock and your time starts now. You discuss malaria prophylaxis. What non-pharmacological management options would you recommend to Grace? List 4 non-pharmacological management options. All right, time is up. Let's get to the answers. So in this case here, you're going to have noticed there's going to be that overlap there in terms of things like using mosquito nets. Now, I've intentionally made the last question and this question have that kind of vague overlap there because you will occasionally see this in the actual exam as well, where you answer a question, you think, fantastic, I've got that one. Then you get to the next question and you're like, oh, actually, I want to use that answer again. They intentionally try to make it so that you shouldn't use the same answer for more than one question within each case. And so if you see a situation like this, ask yourself, in which case would that be a more or most appropriate response? Use it there, remove it from the other question, and try and find a different response you could give. So what non-pharmacological management options do we have here? Things like cover limbs, so wearing light-coloured long trousers and long sleeve shirts in the evenings, sleep in sunscreened accommodation, sunscreened. How to tell I live in Mildura. Sleep in screened accommodation or using mosquito nets. Now, I wouldn't put or in there. That'd probably veer into overcoating. So that'd be a screened accommodation / mosquito nets that would be grouped together. You would only get marks for one of those responses. Now, you can actually get mosquito nets that are perathroid impregnated. I wouldn't be specifying that for this one because they have specifically asked for non-pharmacological management options, and one may make the argument that that's then a medicated option and would potentially be pharmacotherapy. It'd be pedantic as hell. I think if you're putting down just mosquito nets, that's enough. Now, of course, the simple thing is to just avoid outside activities between dawn and dusk, those periods where mosquitoes are going to be most active, and staying away from them will definitely get you a mark. And, of course, avoiding perfume and aftershave. Turns out mosquitoes have great taste. They like our perfumes and aftershave as well, and will hunt you down if you deign to wear them. So some of the responses we have here is nets, repellent, long sleeves, all fantastic, and be born with thalassemia. You can recommend it as non-pharmacological management. There's not a whole lot they can do about that. So full marks other than potentially that last one. And of course, let's go back here, sorry. Mosquito nets, bottled water, that's the response to the last one. The only thing I think of is to add sleep in rooms with screens or closed windows. Yep, fantastic. I think there would potentially be overlap, and again, you would probably try and diversify answers a little bit. But I think if you got really, really stuck, you could always try putting that down. You wouldn't lose marks, you might just not gain additional marks, if that makes sense. Really, it's a barrier method, as you said for your last answer. There we go. All right, the final question for tonight. Let's get 2 minutes on the clock, and your time starts now. You discuss malaria prophylaxis. What pharmacological management options would you recommend to Grace? List 2 pharmacological management options. Doses are not required. All right, time is up. Let's have a look at the answers here. And we've got multiple options for you. So we've got Malarone, or atorvaquone and proguanil. I can never pronounce those properly. Again, it has specified here that dosing is not required. And so while it's fantastic to know these things, and I think you would really show that finesse and polish if you would have mentioned things like taken with fatty food or full-fat milk daily, but I don't think you would need to know the actual chemical dosing there. Now, for your knowledge as well, these should be started 1 to 2 days before entering a malaria-prone zone and continuing for 7 days after you leave the malaria-prone zone. Doxycycline is oral, also a fantastic option. Again, it's that starting 1 to 2 days before entering and continuing for 4 weeks after leaving. So it's a substantially longer period that you would need to be treating for if you're using doxycycline. Now, a pharmacological option would actually be regularly applying DEET-containing insect repellent on exposed skin. That is a form of pharmacotherapy. It's a topical therapy and would be worth a mark. So if you ever get stuck for these kinds of things, ask yourself, is there anything a little bit more out of the box that you can think of that might be appropriate here? And as Jenna has pointed out in the chat here, this is going to be a mefloquine resistant area, and so mefloquine in this instance would not get you marks. If you're ever uncertain, I think it's probably safer to just not put down that option and use Malarone or doxycycline preferentially. For tolerability and just ease of not having to continue for quite so long, Malarone's a fantastic option, but doxycycline's also very good. Be mindful that there can be interactions with the Levelin as well, and that should also be taken into consideration, along with things like patient preference, of course. So we've got answers here of doxycycline, yes, and presuming it's mefloquine resistant, and doxycycline until 28 days after travel. So smashing it out of the park, guys. Very, very well done.